Greetings everyone, welcome to the channel. In this particular video, I am going to discuss comprehensively with you all the solar missions. Precisely, I'll be focusing on the missions which are very recent, that is from 2020 onwards. But whatever missions are important from previous years, I will also be discussing that with you. So please take your current affairs copy and try to jot down the notes from this particular video. The very first mission is SOHO. Full form is Solar and Heliospheric Observatory. Whether it is important to remember the full forms? Definitely yes. Because ALET and Clat both have a tendency to ask the full forms. It was a joint mission of NASA and European Space Agency. It was launched, please check the year 1995. And this particular mission is still operational. What was the main purpose? This is also very important when it comes to statement based questions, right? Statement oriented questions will definitely ask the purposes. And ALET has, luckily, we have seen that ALET has changed the pattern, but earlier, ALET used to give UPSC like questions, statement 1 and 2, statement 2 and 3, and stuff like that. So we cannot really say that these questions are out of trend. Clat also has a tendency, somewhat seen very recently, to adopt such methods of framing questions. So it is very important that you focus on the statement oriented information also. And when we talk about this statement oriented information, I mean that purpose is important. So the purpose was to study the sun's interior, outer atmosphere, and solar wind. Now, why to study these phenomena? Because recently what we have seen is that these phenomena affect communications that take place on Earth. Basically, there is intercept with the radio waves, and these radio waves are largely used for communication. Your television, your satellite communication, everything happens via radio waves. So whatever happens on Sun affects Earth's magnetosphere and has an impact on our ozone layer as well as the environment. So that is why to study the interior of the Sun, outer atmosphere, solar wind. Also very important phenomena is coronal mass ejection, and that was the SOHO mission. So remember that it was a joint mission of NASA and ESA. Moving further ahead, the second mission is STEREO. Full form Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory. Terrestrial means surface of Earth. So whatever is the relation between Earth and the Sun was largely the focus. It was an exclusive NASA mission launched in 2006, had two spacecrafts, Stereo A and Stereo B. Both were positioned on a linear line, ahead of the Sun and one behind the Earth. I mean, one ahead of the Earth and the another one behind. So it was the Earth, and they were like this. One was positioned on this side, the other was positioned on this side. Now you know that the Earth is always rotating as well as it is revolving around the Sun. To have full time 24 by 7 visibility of the Sun, it was placed like that. Now, this particular probe has helped NASA scientists to understand more about the energy flow and the matter flow between the Sun and the Earth, including all the solar phenomena. So, it was launched in 2006, right? The other is Connaught Solar B. Now, this is Japanese mission, which was all the more launched in the same time frame. 2006, NASA has launched Stereo, and Japan has launched to Connaught. So it was a follow-up mission of the previous Yoko mission, which was launched by JAXA in 1991. Now, this particular probe has helped scientists to ascertain what is the impact on solar magnetic field. Scientists have also been able to establish a relationship between solar magnetic field and solar wind. Solar wind is a disturbance caused in the space weather because of uh, rapid instantaneous ejections from sun's chromosphere. JAXA का full form याद रखेंगे, जापान एरोस्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन एजेंसी, एंड इट वाज ऑल द मोर अ जॉइंट मिशन ऑफ यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका एंड यूके. तो 1991 में जब ये लॉन्च हुआ था योको, तो इसमें यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका, यूनाइटेड किंगडम और जापान तीनों लोग शामिल थे. लेकिन जो फॉलो अप मिशन आया 2006 में हिनॉट, उसमें जाक्सा एक्सक्लूसिवली था. For the fact, it is very important that you remember that it has used X-ray images, X-ray studies of the sun to frame our initial perceptions about a star, right? The other is Solar Dynamics Observatory. It was launched by NASA in 2010, and they wanted to further probe into the space weather and how solar flares impacted the space weather. So the solar magnetic cycles and the solar flares were the chief subject area, right? Moving to the next. This is IRIS, interface region, imaging spectrograph. Interface is the region, interface between obviously Sun and Earth. It's a very recent mission launched in June 2013. The main purpose is to study the solar materials that gather energy. These solar materials, while passing through the Sun and the Earth in that particular distance, they heat up the Sun's lower atmosphere. And that is why the scientists wanted to study the underlying causes. This particular probe has made very important discoveries. We now have a better understanding of solar atmosphere and solar wind. Moving to the next, this is Solar Orbiter. So again, it was a joint mission of NASA and ESA, and again, very recent one, February 2020. The main objective was to study Sun's polar regions, very important, and understand how winds impact the Sun and Earth interactions. It is the first spacecraft to have charted around the Sun's pole. We'll remember this. Moving to the next part. Parker Solar Probe is another NASA's recent mission launched in 2018, and the purpose is to approach the Sun closer than any other space probe before. So it will fly close to the Sun, nearly 6.2 million kilometers closer to the Sun, which is approximately twice the distance that we have between the Earth and the Moon, and it will be the first mission ever to do so. So, what is the speciality of Parker Solar Probe that it is able to withstand such heavy, high temperatures of 2700 degree Fahrenheit and all of that? So, the antenna of Parker Solar Probe, which is basically the field's antenna, it is going to study the magnetosphere of Sun. So, Sun has a certain magnetic dimension, and they are going to study the magnetic cycles of the Sun. And this particular antenna is made up of niobium alloy. Very important fact, niobium alloy, which allows Parker Solar Probe to approach Sun at such a close distance and still function. Very important. Moving to the next part. CUSP, CubeSat for solar particles. Now, why we did not see news? CUSP, because NASA scientists have been unable to establish contact with this particular CubeSat, and that is why they are still trying to figure out the trajectory and the location. But it is one of the important missions because NASA so far has not declared it yet that it is a failed mission. So it is a NASA mission launched under Artemis program, right? And the maiden flight probe that they have created, the shuttle that they have created, the Space Launch System, which is a very recent one to be launched by NASA, they have used that, right? 16th November 2022. This particular CubeSat was very small and it has gone blind. Mihir Desai is the principal investigator, very important fact. The purpose was to study the disruptions in space weather, how radio communications are disrupted, and how Earth atmosphere interacts with the solar wind. So largely you will find that all the solar probes that we have studied so far were basically for a similar purpose, right? Now we have very recent one, ISRO also joining the league. We have Aditya L1 already launched on 2nd of September 2023 on PSLV C57. So the launch vehicle is very important, the date is very important, and where it shall be placed. So it shall be placed on Lagrange 1, L1 point, which is a point between Sun and the Earth, where the gravitational pull of the Sun, where the gravitational pull of the Sun is almost similar to that of the Earth. And that is why when the spacecraft in this particular point, which is L1, it is very, it saves a lot of fuel because you need very less amount of fuel to keep the probe into the orbit, right? So you just need to do certain little maneuvers so that it stays in the trajectory. Now there are five points. So L1, we have L2, we have the L3, we have the L4, and then we have the point exactly above. That is the L5. Now these points basically allow the probe to stay almost at a fixed position, and it will revolve as the Earth will revolve. So this is very important for us to understand the significance of L1 point. And now what it is going to study? It is going to study solar atmosphere, solar magnetic storms, and their impact on the Earth. Nigar Shaji is the project's director, also very important fact. Not many people know of it. The project was conceptualized basically in 2008. It has around 7 payloads. Now you will have to do a little research to look into what are the purpose of these particular payloads. So first payload is VELC, is basically going to study the coronagraph. The suit, Papa, Solex X, Hell1 OS, Aspects, and ATHRDM. So just try to make one liner notes out of the purpose. Very important is VELC payload. This is going to be the primary, observatory. Observatory, you can say, device which is going to observe the solar magnetic storms and all of. The other important solar probes before 2000 that you need to keep in mind is Pioneer 5, Genesis, Ulysses, and Wind. So, what was Pioneer 5? It was a very ancient, you can say, solar probe launched in the 1960s era by NASA to study the interplanetary space that exists between the Earth and Venus. And that is the remarkable discovery that it has made was discovery of interplanetary magnetic fields. So this was the first, space probe ever that basically hovered around Sun and confirmed that yes, interplanetary magnetic fields definitely are there. Moving to the next part, Genesis. Now it was a NASA sample return probe. You need to remember this NASA sample return probe, which means they were going to go somewhere between the Sun and the Earth, and they were going to collect particles and come back to the Earth. So they collected samples of the solar wind particles and returned to Earth. It crash landed in Utah, right, while returning from the journey. It was launched in 2001, very important fact. And it was the first mission to return material beyond the orbit of the moon. So within the orbit of the moon was Apollo 11, right? Within the orbit of the moon was uh, Apollo 11 within the orbit of moon. आप ऐसा समझ सकते हैं इसको सिंपली कि मून के बाहर पहली बार कोई भी चीज़ पार्टिकल अगर हम कलेक्ट करके लेके आए तो वो जेनेसिस ने हमारी मदद करी थी और मून से अपोलो 11 ने, राइट। और काफ़ी सारे पार्टिकल्स जो ये लेके कलेक्ट करके आया था वो कंटामिनेटेड बट सम ऑफ देम स्टिल वर एबल टू सर्वाइव एंड साइंटिस्ट आर स्टडीइंग दैट, राइट। Ulysses. It was a joint mission basically of European Space Agency and NASA, and Canada also was partnering into this particular probe. The main purpose was to orbit around the sun and study all of its latitudes. So if you want to study the sun's latitude, basically this is the solar system plane. Solar system plane means whatever planets are revolving around the sun are revolving on this plane at different uh, distances. So consider it like this, that this is the plane and these are the planets that we have, right? These are the planets that we have. So if you, and they are only basically focusing on this latitude of sun. So if you want to study this latitude, this latitude, this latitude of sun, this latitude of sun, this latitude, the probe has to be shifted, right, up and down, which was never done earlier. So this requires a lot of push, right? You need to escape the magnetic forces, the interplanetary magnetic forces, and to an extent they were successful. It was launched in 1990 and has successfully done the latitude scans of sun, fast latitudes of scans of sun 3 times, right? Remember this, fast latitude scans of sun 3 times: 1994, 95, 2004, 2005, 2001, and 2007 to 2008. So this was the three latitudinal scans that it had done, and the last day of its operation was 30th June 2009. After which NASA declared it to be defunct, and the space craft was originally named Odysseus due to its lengthy trajectory to study the solar poles. However, the name was changed to Ulysses at the request of European Space Agency. The other is the wind. So it was basically a small satellite that was to study the radio as well as the plasma waves that occur in the solar wind and Earth's magnetosphere. So it was a satellite which had to be placed at the L1 point. It was launched in 1994 and had been working and giving signals back to the Earth since recently NASA declared that they are not able to make any contact with this particular. So with this, that's the wrap of the session. Remember all the space probes that we have discussed of different space agencies and whatever were the purposes. This was Harshvardhan Tripathi. I hope you found the session useful. Do tell me in the comment box. I'll see you in the next.